So we are just going to wait for a few more minutes. Just let everyone log in who's now getting logged in, and then we will get started. So as we wait here a few more minutes, we are welcoming you to this event partner training webinar on code of conduct and student-centered processes and procedures. So we're really excited about this one. It was one that we had planned when we put our schedule together. We had planned this one for now, and it just so happened that it fell really well in line with the updates to G4 and G5. So we're excited to present this tonight. So we're just going to give everyone a few more minutes to be able to log in, and then we will get started.
Yeah, we should tell them about our special guest tonight too.
Yes, absolutely. So for our special guest tonight, we have Dan Troy, who is, well, tell us, Dan, who are you?
I am the chair for the Rules and Conduct Committee. And so I am one of the people who handles the code of conduct situations as they come in.
Correct. And are you going to stay off camera today, or are we going to get to see who you are?
I guess I'll turn my camera on for a second. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. For some reason, I thought my camera was on. Embarrassing.
I was just checking, I thought maybe you wanted to stay incognito back there, hide, but your voice will be recognized.
It's okay.
It's good to have a name to the face sometimes. So Dan Troy is the chair, like he said, for the rules and no.
Rules and Conduct Committee.
Thank you. The Rules and Conduct
Yep.
Committee.
Yep.
Basically, they are the ones who will find out what they do later on in this webinar. So we are currently at about, no, not quite 50% yet. So maybe we'll give a few more minutes. We'll give till 7:03 and then we'll get started. Just to make sure everyone has a chance to log on that wants to. And we try to keep these to just about an hour. And then just to be respectful of everyone's time. It will be recorded. We just started recording them. So if you want to go back and watch one that you've missed from this year, they are actually all on the racf.org website right now. So that's where you can go and find them. Both the coach webinars and the event partner webinars. All right, we are steadily increasing with the number of people attending, so that's exciting. I think this is one that's going to be good for everyone to know. So we're excited that you guys are here with us tonight.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be part of this. I'm excited to help answer some questions for the community. I know this is a very fun topic for everybody, so I can't wait to help everybody out.
A fun topic. I like that. All right. So let's move on to the next slide, Bill, and we'll just start talking about that slide. Well, we still have a few people logging on here. So basically some housekeeping for tonight. This is view only, so cameras, microphones will be disabled during the webinar for any attendees. Q&A, we really welcome your questions, but in an effort to be able to look at them and be able to answer them well, we ask that you use the Q&A function. So you can submit questions. The Q&A function is at the bottom bar of your screen here. You will see Q&A. So use that to ask your questions. After this webinar, if you fill out the PD form, you will get the resource sheet sent to you, or you can find that tomorrow on the RE page. And then throughout this webinar, there will be QR codes that you can scan. So if you have your camera ready or an iPad, you can scan those QR codes and you can actually, it will bring you straight to the website or the article that we are working from. So that's a good place to just be able to follow along on stuff that we are talking about. So we are at 7:04, so let's just keep going, Bill. Let's start this. So for now, for today, and even if you are watching this later at the recording, we just want to make you aware that if there are any conflicts between the content of this webinar and official documents and policies, including the game manuals, code of conduct, student-centered policy, and qualifying criteria, the most current version of the official documents and policies take precedence. So just keep that in mind as you are looking at this, and make sure you go check some of those too if you have a question about something. And like always, we start our presentations by taking a moment to review our mission and vision. So the Robotics Education and Competition Foundation's global mission is to provide every educator with competition, education, and workforce readiness programs to increase student engagement in science, technology, engineering, math, and computer science. And the vision is that we see a future where every student designs and innovates as part of a team, overcomes failures, perseveres, and emerges confident in their ability to meet global challenges. I think for this webinar, it's more important than ever to touch on that mission and vision, and we'll come back to that later. And basically, these are the same for all of our programs. So we oversee a variety of VEX Robotics competitive programs. The VEX IQ competition, robotics competition, which sometimes we'll say VIQRC, the VEX V5 robotics competition, which is shortened to V5RC. If we talk about JROTC, we're talking about the Junior Reserve Officers Training Course. They have their own program, or basically their own group, high school students. And then there's also VEX-U and VEX-AI. So VEX-U robotics competition. So those are the abbreviations. So if you see those used, that's what those are. So in an effort to protect a fair competition environment and the integrity of the mission and the vision of the VEX Robotics competitions and the Robotics Competition in Education Foundation, the RECF, we have put certain procedures and processes in place. We are not expecting our EPs and other volunteer staff to be experts on robot design or code. And we're not looking for anyone to seek out code of conduct violations. So definitely don't look at this webinar as that. This is to give you the resources and the tools to use if you end up in that situation. So we want to make you aware of the available resources and procedures so that you can join us in giving our students the opportunity to keep learning in the best student-centered environment possible. That's our goal. And we have all heard the word code of conduct, but what is the purpose? It is to set certain expectations on the behavior we expect at an event. These expectations apply to, but are not limited to team members, mentors, parents, any adult associated with a team, event partners, and volunteers. And so what are they? Well, basically act with integrity, honesty, and reliability. Behave in a respectful and professional manner with all event participant attendees and RECF staff members. Exhibit maturity and professionalism when dealing with difficult and stressful situations. Respect individual differences. Respect the facility and equipment provided at an event. Follow all rules as listed in the current game manuals. operate as student-centered teams according to the student-centered policy, prioritize safety in actions and design, and demonstrate good sportsmanship, which includes supporting your alliance partners. The code of conduct may also apply to behaviors outside of RCF sanctioned events where inappropriate actions are related to an event or participating individuals. So judges will consider team conduct and ethics when determining awards. That being said, that will be at the event. So, like we mentioned in the slide before, judges will look at code of conduct when reviewing teams for award nominations at an event. The rules include the rules included in code of conduct violations are S1, S2, G1, G2, G4, G5, and R1 through 4. They're in a different order up there, but that's easier to say because that's all alphabetical order, or at least in order of the notebook, the game manual. However, repeated or egregious violations of the expectations in this policy, even outside of an event, may result in consequences up to the disqualification of the team or organization from the current event and or future events, and potentially removal from the program after review by the RACF. So these are some points to keep in mind. It is RACF policy that RACF staff may only interact with adults during the rules and conduct violation resolution process that happens after events. In cases where the primary coach is determined to be a minor, RACF staff will insist upon communicating with an adult, and the team will be required to change their registered primary coach. Where a team is found to have committed a serious violation, the team may not retain the benefits obtained as a result of the violation, such as qualification to higher level of competition. The entire process is anonymous, and the reporting party will not be made aware of the outcome of the report. And the process is handled by the Rules and Conduct Committee, the RCC, in accordance with the guidelines that we'll touch on later in this presentation. So we're really trying to streamline this process for everyone. So hopefully everyone is now aware of the changes to G4. It was updated first in the Q&A, but now it's actually also, it is also now in the game manual. So the updated rule gives clearer guidelines for understanding of the rule. It clarifies expectations when inspired by another robot. It specifies that using provided plans or hole counting is a violation, emphasizes relevant portions of the student-centered policy in regards to coding, and it puts burden of proof on students if G2 and G4 concerns arise. The team member rules were also given its own rule, and G5 now covers students only being on one team. That's basically the summary of that rule. But do read it for more details. And so why did we make such changes to the G4? Well, copied, shared, and sold robot plans and code have become more common and more visible, and the community asked VEX Robotics and RCF to solve the problem. And two, the prior version of Rule G4 left much room for interpretation and didn't make the GDC's intentions clear or as clear as they wanted them to be. So if we look back at the mission and vision, we want to increase student engagement in science, technology, engineering, math, and computer science. Engagement is the key word there. Copying is not engaging. And we envision a future where every student designs and innovates as part of a team, not coaches, but the students. The students overcome failure, they persevere, and they emerge confident in their ability to meet global challenges. When you fail, you try again. You learn. You learn a lot more than if you copy someone else's design. And this is not about winning awards. I know, shocker, right? It's not about winning the awards. It's about gaining skills, whether it's technical skills or it is soft skills. Both of those are important. And I really like the quote that one of our RSMs said. Basically, we want students to think of their robot code notebook as a research paper. Your students cannot copy verbatim when writing a research paper, but they're going to look at different sources for inspiration and direction. The notebook is like the robot's bibliography, where they cite the sources and go over what they discovered during their research. Copying a robot would be considered plagiarism, as would be taking ideas from places without citing them appropriately. So there's another soft skill or another technical skill to learn as we learn that. And as you can imagine, the same goes for coding. The GDC expanded parts of the new G4 to better include coding, but that said, what's in the student-centered policy is still the clearest set of guidelines when it comes to coding. For acceptable and unacceptable examples of mechanical design, construction, coding, and strategy solutions, please refer to the student-centered policy in the RCF library. And that's a nice segue over to Bill, who will share more about our student-centered policy with you all. Go ahead, Bill.
Sorry, wasn't quite prepared, got my camera going. Hi, my name's Bill. I'm the Regional Support Manager for Southern California and Hawaii. So I want to talk about the student-centered policy. So here's a link to the student-centered policy. Simply stated, students in RECF programs should make all build, design, and gameplay decisions. Students utilizing the engineering design process is a key part of our programs. When adults or mentors deny the opportunity for students to perform these tasks, we are denying them an opportunity to learn. Furthermore, if a mentor is making these decisions for the team or is participating in the designing, building, or programming, they're in violation of this policy. In the context of the RECF and competitive robotics, being student-centered means that students are at the core of every activity, decision, and learning experience. They are the ones designing, building, programming, and testing their robots, while adults serve as mentors and guides rather than directors. This approach encourages students to take ownership of their work, think critically, and solve problems through hands-on experience. It also ensures the students are the ones communicating their ideas, strategies, and designs during competition, highlighting that the knowledge and effort truly belong to them. A student-centered robotics program helps students develop more than just technical skills. It builds leadership, teamwork, communication, and resilience by allowing students to take on meaningful roles and make key decisions. They learn responsibility and gain confidence. Coaches and mentors support their growth by providing guidance and structure, but they step back to let students learn through exploration and discovery. Ultimately, student-centered aligns with RECF's mission to empower students to learn, lead, and prepare for future success in STEM and beyond. So what is the Rules and Conduct Committee and what does it do? It protects volunteers, gives volunteers a place to be heard and back up when necessary. It builds community trust, shows that RECF values and professionalism and inclusivity. It provides accountability, gives event partners and staff framework to address issues consistently. It sets clear expectations, ensures teams, coaches, and volunteers understand acceptable behavior. It supports fairness, helps maintain integrity, sportsmanship, and a level playing field, and it protects students, prioritizes safety, respect, and a positive environment for all participants. There is no single right way to have this conversation. So this is about how do you prepare as an EP to possibly have some of these conversations. But there are many wrong ones. This process can be difficult and uncomfortable for everyone involved, and it's important it be handled with professionalism, empathy, and respect on both sides. Please know your regional support manager is always here to support you. You do not need to do it alone. So if you do need to have a conversation with the team for possibly making a violation, make sure that you speak respectfully at all times, even if the discussion becomes emotional or contentious. End the interview immediately if behavior becomes disruptive or inappropriate. Try to maintain neutrality. Most of the time, these are just discussions about something that you might have heard. Ensure confidentiality. Only those directly involved in the review process may attend or be informed of the interview details. All information shared during the interview must be treated as confidential and stored securely. Remind all participants that Rule G1A prohibits recording of the discussion. Respect the team's right to be heard. Allow all parties the opportunity to explain their perspective. Do not interrupt or challenge their responses. Okay. We have some resources available for you and your volunteers. We have on the right, there's a QR code to the volunteer field note to judge advisor. This is a form that can be printed out and used by event staff to alert a judge advisor of things that may affect their process. The team violation tracking report, which we talked about, is one where you can document any incident and bring it to the attention of the RCC. The additional evidence report, simply for additional evidence, if you have more pictures or more evidence that you'd like to add to the original report, you can go ahead and add it there. Now we have Chris to get into more specifics about how the process works.
Yeah, so as it was stated earlier, there's really no one size fits all to these, but in the game manual, it does kind of lay out a couple of specific scenarios that might pop up and gives you kind of a flow chart about how to go through those. So this first flow chart we're going to look at kind of deals with the process of what happens if a COC related issue comes up during inspections. So let's say one of your inspectors finds a robot that they think there might be a rule violation on. How do they handle that? And so as you can see here by the flow chart, first, they're going to let the head referee know. So the head referee can come over and make that final decision. The head referee is going to be involved in any kind of game rule decision, regardless of whether it's at the field or if it's in the pits. Any kind of game rule violation that's happening at an event, the head referee is always going to be involved in that conversation. So if the head referee decides that it does need to proceed forward, that there is a suspected COC violation, that's when that process begins. So that's when he would let the event partner know, and they'd gather up the team and then probably start talking with this team to investigate that situation further and more deeply than they could at the inspection table. Next slide. So, the violations aren't always going to happen at the inspection table. That'd be too easy. So what happens if the violation is noticed by a head referee or a field volunteer, like a scorekeeper at the field itself? So if there's a rule violated, this is the kind of process that goes through at the field itself that the head referee is going to go through. First, is it a COC related violation? If yes, then we're going to notify the EP and we're going to begin that COC process. If no, then we start kind of going down just the referee's checklist of, does the rule have specific guidance that's already in the game manual that makes it a minor or a major violation? If yes, then it elevates to a major or minor violation according to those rules. If no, the game manual doesn't have anything laid out specifically about it, then the head referee is going to look at, is this violation match affecting? Did it change the results of the match? Did one team score more points because of this violation? If yes, then that becomes a major violation and a possible DQ. If no, they continue down the flow chart. Has the team or alliance already been warned about this violation before? If yes, again, this could turn into a major violation and a DQ. If no, it's going to be a minor violation and they're just going to give the team the warning and they'll move on with matches. Big thing for the referees is that they're going to note this down someplace. They're going to either keep a written log or a digital log to let them know that they've given these minor violations in case that team comes back up to the field again. And then we see our more complicated flow chart here. This is actually the flow chart that teams go, or the EPs go through if you have a source outside of your key volunteer group. So maybe this is a field queuer that hears something while teams are queued up at the queue table. Or maybe this is somebody in the pits that overhears somebody, or a coach from the pits coming in and reporting something. So this is a little bit more detailed flow chart that we go through. So you can see at the top here, first off, that person, whoever it is, whether it's one of your volunteers or a coach or a parent or whoever the case might be, they should report that immediately to the event partner, the person running the event. Okay. From there, the event partner starts working their way through this flow chart. So is there enough information in the report to identify the specific team? Did they actually get a team number? Did they get some information like that? Do they get photos or videos? What kind of details do they have? If no, we can record it for reference later in case something else occurs. But if yes, then we can continue down this process. Then we have enough information that we can start to actually investigate something. So then the event partner is going to activate their key volunteers. They're going to activate their head referee, their judge advisor. If there's an REC staff there, maybe that they get them involved as well. And they'd all discuss this potential violation. And I want to stress that it's potential at this point. We have no evidence proving that it's there for sure. And they will discuss that and talk about potential outcomes. They move down the list. Does the event COC panel believe the penalty is warranted? You know, is this an actual valid complaint by a team or a volunteer or a coach? If no, we can document it for later just in case something else comes up. If yes, we continue down this list. The event partner then is going to contact REC staff. They're going to contact their regional support manager and they're going to say, we've got a potential COC violation here or a potential major violation here that I want to report in just to keep you aware of what's going on. As RSMs, we're going to support you. You know, your decision is what it matters. We'll just give you guidance, whatever guidance you ask for. Okay. We can't make the decisions for you. You and your key volunteers have to make those decisions, but we can help guide you and point you in the right direction to this flow chart or other materials you might need. If the RSM agrees that yes, this is something warranting a penalty, and you've discussed it with them, they'll advise you to move on to the next step, which is then to inform your head referee and judge advisor of those outcomes. And then we want to talk to that coach and that team, and we want to get verification. So you're heading out to the team, you're doing an interview with them, talk about what the suspected violation is, give them a chance to give some feedback. Maybe a good example of this that I get often is somebody reports in a coach is programming on the team's computer. So we get to the point where I go talk to the team and I see the coach and he's just doing his work on a spreadsheet for school. He just happens to be in the pit, which is probably not a great area to be working on a laptop with your school homework. Okay? So it ends up just being a misunderstanding. Then everything can stop there. But you go and interview the team, you give them a chance to kind of give their side of the story. And then you as a volunteer group are going to meet again and decide how you want to proceed with this. Do you think it warrants further action at the event? If no, you're going to just document it and move on. If yes, then we have some decisions to make about what we're going to do for an appropriate penalty for this team with whatever action happened. Again, you want to keep your RSM in the loop with what's going on because there's nothing worse for an RSM than get a call by the team the next day talking about how they're mistreated at an event. Okay? So keep your RSM in the loop with what's going on, and they can kind of help point you in the right direction. Next up, I think we have our flow chart that is, again, about the code of conduct process, specifically about code of conduct, not necessarily just any random rule violation, but specifically about code of conduct and kind of what happens after the event. And so this one's actually going to be presented by Dan. So Dan's going to talk a little bit about what happens after the event if a code of conduct is reported in.
So good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody. My name is Dan Troy. I'm the Director of Regional Operations, and I am here today as a representative of the Rules and Conduct Committee. In particular, I am the chair of the committee. And so today, after everything that happens at your event, what actually happens? And so whenever I have the opportunity to attend events and get to talk to everybody, the biggest question that I always get is, what happens? And so this is on the library, and I do ask that everyone goes ahead and takes a look at this. I will try and give a very brief overview of everything that you see here. But what happens is we receive your report. The Rules and Conduct Committee as a whole, not just as an individual, will then start to look for the validity of the report. And so an invalid report is something that honestly just doesn't have enough information or doesn't have the correct information filled out on it. Once we determine that the report is valid, we then start to draft an email. We start to gather all the relevant information, and we send a request to the primary contact of the team to gather that information. We then wait for the response. We then review the response as well as any additional information that we have, that we collected, and we start to then determine our next point of action. And so from here, we decide either no sanction is applied and they get an email saying so, or there is going to be a sanction applied. Some of those sanctions can be just a simple formal warning, letting them know that the next time that this occurs, that it is going to escalate further. But it can also be skill scores removed from that event, qualifications removed from that event, removal from an event region championship, or even removal from the world championship itself. All of those sanction examples are examples that happened just last year, including the last few years. But let's just say that the team doesn't agree with their sanction. Is there a right to an appeal? Yes. At the end of the day, the code of conduct process is a shield. It is there meant to protect the community and the teams, as well as the teams that are going through this process. So there is a way to appeal. And so what happens is they have 14 days to appeal after the letter gets sent. And what happens is the appeal will go to the CEO, who will then have a meeting and go through all the information himself. And he will make a decision on whether he's going to stand by the sanction as it was addressed, or he's going to modify the sanction. Once the CEO sends that email, the report is final and it's complete. Please note that this is a very sensitive topic, and we understand it. We take it very seriously. The Rules of Conduct Committee looks at every single report that comes in, and it is thoroughly gone through as much as we can. So the more details that you as an event partner can provide for us, the better results that we can have in having the conversations with these teams. With that being said, after that, the newest addition would be the G4 and G2 robot marketplace reporting. We hear you. We are trying to address this as much as we can. We have looked into this as much as we can, and we have created this initiative and in asking you, the community, to help us uphold this policy by reporting the suspected violations. We understand that some innocent teams might get caught up in this, and we understand that this is not going to be a perfect system, but we are doing our best to try and build that shield and look at the long-term health of our ecosystem and maintaining a fair and equitable environment for everybody. So as you're going through it, please feel free to use this. Again, there's a committee that does review these, And it is very important to us, but again, we are listening to you. This is something that we want to look after. And so everything that you've heard so far is what the COC process is. The one thing that I want to make sure that I also stress is what the COC process isn't or is not. The COC process should never be used as a sword. It is not a weapon. The COC process is a shield. It's meant to protect the community. It's meant to protect you as the EP. It's meant to protect and safeguard the rules and the fairness of the platform. So the COC process should never be used by teams for headhunting or going after something that happened even last season. The COC process is for issues that happen this season and try and maintain it that way. We look at every report as they come in with the information that is available. So the RCC is here to help you as the event partner get through it. So if there are if you as the key volunteers don't feel like there's enough evidence and that nothing should happen at the event, that's okay. But if you're suspicious, go ahead and send it. Like the Rules and Conduct Committee will follow up on that. So the one thing that I can't stress enough is please, please, please never use the code of conduct process as a threat to the teams. At the end of the day, they are children, and this is an educational competition, and we want it to be a learning experience as much as possible. So we want to try and give them as much opportunity to grow out of this process as possible. And as a reminder, this is a very private process. So after a report gets filed, you will never find out what the outcomes are. So please don't email the Code of Conduct Committee asking if we can share the results. What I can say is just last year alone, there were over 350 reports that came in. Every single one of them got reviewed. And some of the examples that I shared before were some of the sanctions that were applied to teams. And so it is a very private process, and we do ask to respect the confidentiality of it. And now I'm going to kick it back to Chris to talk about the youth protection policy.
Sure. Before I talk about youth protection, though, I just kind of want to reiterate what Dan Troy was just saying about reporting these things. So if you and your key volunteers don't feel comfortable reporting, dealing with it at the event because you're not quite 100% sure and you just don't feel like you're there, collect as much information as you can and send that up to the Rules and Conduct Committee and let them take a look at it. They look at these all the time. You might only have to deal with one or two a year. They deal with, like he was saying, hundreds. So if you're not sure and you don't want to do something at the event, that's fine. Make sure to report it though, because if you don't report it, then the people you're hurting are the 99% of teams that are following the rules. So just make sure that you are reporting those things in so that the Rules and Conduct Committee can deal with it after the fact. So how does youth protection policy play into code of conduct? So, at the REC Foundation, we have a youth protection policy, and I laid out a couple of the first bullets here, but how this relates to code of conduct is the fact that when you're doing your code of conduct interviews with individuals or teams, you should be doing these in a private setting. Well, if you're in a private setting with a team, you need to make sure that they have a coach or they have one of their parents present during that interview. You don't want to take just a group of kids into a private setting. That kind of breaks that youth protection policy. So just make sure if you're doing these interviews that you have a coach, you have a parent there with you while you're talking to the team, because you're going to be someplace other than in the pits. You're going to be someplace other than the field. You're going to be somewhere private. So you just want to make sure that we're following our youth protection policy when you do those interviews. With that, we are going to kick it over to question and answer. So this is the time where you have a chance we left a lot of time in this session to let you ask your questions. That way, you've got Dan here who can answer those questions, and you can get it right from the RCC themselves, how they handle different scenarios. Do we have any questions on the question and answer that Dan can answer already?
We do. I would say let's start with a question of I started most of my students with the HeroBot. Is that also a violation?
And when the RCC was working with the GDC, we made sure that we knew that it was going to come up. And so, no, it is not a violation. So just to make it as clear as possible, it is Rule G4 subsection C. And it specifically states that the Vector Robotics HeroBot is absolutely okay. I mean, at the end of the day, Vector Robotics created that robot as a starting point for all teams, especially the new ones. So we made sure that that was included in the language that the HeroBot is 100% okay.
And the thought behind the HeroBot too is to have a starting point to start your design process from. It's not to have a really good robot that will go and win tournaments.
And if you get the opportunity, for those who are starting with the HeroBot, Vex does release 2 videos where they actually break down the HeroBot a little bit and give you some suggestions on different directions that you can make modifications to the robot so the kids can start to learn the design process themselves.
Okay, we got a question if it's possible to release a script for EPs that can be read at the start of competitions to review the new focus of the rules. So we have a library article that has basically a template for an event partner meeting. That was put up probably about a month ago, and I just took a look at it, and I have already sent it off to the person who we will update it basically to also include these G4 and new G5 rule to make it a little bit clearer and easier for event partners to do that in the beginning of the tournament. So that was a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. And then Dan, how is the head referee going to be able to do this in the middle of an event? Basically, it was I think the question where it said the head referee would look at a robot and see something.
So that is a question that we get often, and we do know that at the Vex competitions, typically it is one head referee per event, as well as we do know that they are run back to back to back sometimes. So in particular, when it comes to something that happens field side, like that, the head referee we will typically try and find a break that the head referee can take, and whether that's the lunch break or some sort of natural break in the day where they can go have that conversation. But the times in which they don't actually need to be involved, they reported what they needed to report to the event partner. The event partner can take it from there because we do understand that the head referee's job is a very particularly structured one due to the match schedule. So when you can, try and work it in between breaks in match schedule. But if the head referee has already done their job in reporting it, then the event partner can take it from there.
Thank you. Another question is, has the Code of Conduct Committee considered how ambiguous rules that need to be interpreted by referees cause particular stress to some neurodivergent students in our programs, and how special guidance might need to be given to EPs in situations involving them?
So yes, we have considered that, and we are still looking into how we can make it better. We would love to work with the community with any feedback and suggestions on how we can make this process better. The Code of Conduct Committee or the Rules and Conduct Committee is always open to feedback about any part of the process. So if you ever have any feedback about this, please email codeofconduct@recf.org or get in contact with your RSM, and they can also pass the information along. It is something that we do want to make sure is handled correctly. So please, whoever asked that question, please make sure to reach out to us. We know that there still can be work done, and we want to try and make it as best as possible.
Coding. the use of, which we did touch on this a little bit, but the use of odometry code from outside of an organization is not middle school appropriate as they do not have the math to use it. So touch a little bit on that coding question again, Dan.
So the coding libraries, the use of public coding libraries is in G4, as well as there are multiple Q&As on it. And so I would highly insist on you reading those ones because it is directly from the GDC, and I do not want to speak for the GDC. But libraries in particular are obviously are in question right now. The GDC does have, I believe, 2 really good Q&A answers on it.
So someone said, if I'm not trying to be rude, but what if in a tournament too many teams seem to have the G2, G4 violations, and we just make the EPs and volunteers too busy to interview everyone? What can we do?
So I'm really hoping that now that the rule has been out for a few weeks, that teams have started modifying the way that they build and the way that they have approached the season, so that we can eliminate that. For some of the earlier tournaments, I do understand how that could have been an issue, but for the events that are still having that issue, um, it is possible to interview multiple teams at one time if they are part of the same organization with the same head mentor. So I'm just going to pull random numbers. They are not numbers associated with anything. So team 9999999, if they have an A, B, and C team all there, and they all are suspected of the G2, G4 at the whole 9 yards, you can pull all 3 at the same time. And sometimes that is the better thing to do because then you could look at all 3 at the same time as well, assuming that all 3 of them are believed to be, for lack of a better phrase, clones of each other. So that is one way to combat it. But again, I am hoping that because the rule has been out for a few weeks now, that becomes less of an issue.
So I think this question is interesting because we touched on this today when we spoke about it. When we say that the burden of proof is on the students to demonstrate appropriate skill level for robot design and programming, what are appropriate questions to flesh that out? And what's the threshold for answering these questions sufficiently well? So what we're not looking for is rehearsed answers, right, Dean? We were talking about the enthusiasm and the joy of the students who have built a robot that they want to share about. You want to touch more on that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love, especially about the World Championship, is walking up to a group of kids and just asking them a very open and broad question. A lot of times, just tell me about your robot, or tell me about this part of your robot, or tell me about your code. Something very open and broad. You can usually tell very quickly with how enthusiastic the kids are, or how fast they speak, especially the younger ages. You can just feel the passion as they go. You can feel the story. And so to going back to the beginning part of this conversation, there is no one way to determine that. And so I can't give you a blanket answer of like, oh, you need to look for this, this, and this, or you need to ask this, this, and this question. But I would try and keep it open. And if you do believe that they are giving a rehearsed answer, like one of the tactics that you can do is interrupt them in the middle of them giving their answer and ask a different question based on how they were answering. That will also usually throw off that rehearsed side and get you a little bit different of answers.
All right, so my question is if a head referee, not my question, but someone says, my question is if a head referee observes that a VEX V5 middle school robot and a VEX V5 high school robot appear similar in terms of mechanisms, specifically having the similar gear ratio, the same intake design and measurements, an identical usage of sensors and pneumatics. What's the implication?
So that would, based on just what I'm hearing, that would be a clear violation of G4. And so we would ask you to go through the code of conduct process and let, if it's something that you'd rather the RCC take care of, then the RCC would take care of it. And we would send them the email and get to the bottom of it. But yes, a middle school and a high school team basically having the same robot, that is a violation of the rule.
We also had
Assuming that the
comment.
middle school kid can't,
Nope.
assuming that the middle school students don't have the ability to that level. Because there are obviously some brilliant middle school students out there, especially if they've been doing it for like their third year. They could have the skill level to build that robot, and so that also has to be kept in mind a little bit. It also depends on the skill level of the robot.
Someone also asked if something happens at an event that they are not happy with, how can they file a complaint or report that?
Can you ask that question again? I might have missed the detail.
Yeah, so basically I'm trying to not give detail, but if a team feels like they have been treated unfairly or they're not happy with the way that they were treated, what would they do with that? And basically my answer would be contact your RSM.
Oh, the first step, 100% would be contact your regional support manager with as many details as possible. The regional support manager has many tools in their bag, and then depending on how that conversation goes, it could be one of 3 different forms that they send you to fill out in order to get the information to the best people to get that behavior corrected. And so it might wind up being a code of conduct issue, it might wind up being something different. So the first step should always be contact your regional support manager. The sooner the better. Don't sit on it for like a week, don't sit on it for 3 weeks. It should be right after the event. And I'm not talking within 24 hours. You can take a few days. I always suggest take at least a 24-hour break. Make sure that you remove as many motions as possible. And then email your regional support manager. But it should be within what I'll call business week, so before the next weekend, basically, assuming the event happens on the weekend.
So this is an interesting one. Do you fear false evidence may be used to attack teams?
Yes, I will openly say that I absolutely fear it. It is one of the reasons why the Rules and Conduct Committee is as diverse as it is, as well as why we take every report as seriously as possible. And we have safeguards built in place as best as we can, including the new G4, G2 robot marketplace form having a statement stating that false reports or misuse of the reporting system would wind up being a code of conduct on the reporter itself. It is something that we're very sensitive about, and it's something that we want to try and address as much as possible. Again, I will stress this, and all of my coworkers make fun of me for every time I say it, but the RCC really sees this code of conduct process as a shield. We want to do as much as possible to protect all the students, all the community, the event partners, everyone involved. And we do understand that there might be a bad egg or a bad apple out there that we'll use as a sword, but we will do our best to protect the integrity of not only the competition itself, but the process.
So here's a question. Is there a tool or framework available to help event partners evaluate G4 violations?
It is in the works to get something a little bit better. Currently, there is the library, but we are going to try and make some better resources to help out event partners where we can.
Thank you. So here's How do you approach it if the sister team wrote the code for the team?
That is also a violation of G4. And both teams are impacted at that point. Both understand the rules that are being violated, so both teams would go through that process. It does not the skill level of the robot, which also includes the programming, does not represent the team. So that would be a clear violation.
And just like you can only be a builder for one team, you can only be a programmer for one team, correct? So
So here's a comment. It's very hard to say the age level of students because he has many students who obtain a professional on-shape design certification, but they're still middle school students, and that cert is for adults. But we have some brilliant, brilliant students in these programs, which is why we have the interview process, right?
Exactly. I mean, I used to coach well, it was just called VRC when I was a coach, but I used to coach VRC IQ as well. And I will gladly tell you that some of my middle schoolers could drive circles and build things that were way better than some of my high schoolers. And so it is definitely something to keep in mind, and that's why the interview is so important.
And so here's if a head referee suspects a robot and its programming that is too advanced for the elementary level, what is the implication when the team's engineering notebook provides a thorough explanation of their code and they can answer almost all interview questions, yet they're unable to perform a live demonstration of a program modification in like changing a function or something?
So that is a very difficult question. It is something that we are still investigating to try and get as better resources out there as possible. This goes back to the rehearsing part that Ulrika was mentioning earlier. When you go to have those conversations about programming in particular, especially if they're answering the questions correctly, sometimes the best thing that you can do in that case is interrupt them in the middle of what they're saying in a polite and respectful manner, as well as you can um, also ask more pointed questions, especially if your judge knows anything about coding. Um, Ask them something very particular about the loop statement or the block itself of how it actually works. Um, but it is difficult.
So do complaints have to originate within an event? There's been some recent posts on online forums that kids are threatening other kids with anonymous violation reporting.
Um, the Rules and Conduct Committee typically doesn't um, take reports that are outside an event typically. But what I can say is if you email the complaint to the Code of Conduct Committee, we can look into this and we can address whether it needs addressing or not, especially to see if it coincides with a report that does wind up coming in. Usually, that is an outside environment and civil matter because that would be police involvement / harassment at that point. So that one's a lot harder legally.
Yeah. So we're gonna just move forward. We'll put some of these slides through here, some important dates, and it will end up with the PD certificate that you can get for this time. If you want to be a key volunteer for Worlds, you can, this is also in the library, or you can um, scan that QR code to look at that. But we have one more question here, Dan, that I think is interesting, and I would love to hear your take on it. So, a team watches a video and builds a specific intake of a robot. They cite the inspiration in their notebook. However, They don't modify the intake to make it their own at all. What, if any, response is there to that? Is an event partner expected to consult with judge referee and then inform teams that they're not eligible for a judged award that day? And how do judges do this research during the event to even know this? Most judges are retired engineers with no knowledge of VEX.
So, first of all, the thing that I will say is no team should ever be made aware or told or threatened with that they are going to be removed from the judged awards. The judging process is 100% anonymous and should remain that way. So teams should not be made aware that they are removed from judged awards. But to go back to the original question of a team watching a video to build a particular intake drivetrain subsystem of a robot. I like the word that you used there, which was cite the inspiration in their notebook. So there's a difference between whole for whole copying and being inspired by a mechanism that they see online. If they're able to cite the inspiration of the mechanism or part or subsystem, and they build it their way, and so it's not a screw for screw copy. They did things that are slightly different, and they have the ability to demonstrate that. Then they did make it their own without realizing it. And so it's the screw for screw, pin for pin copying that is what is being combated. And so I liked the word that you used there, citing inspiration, because that means that they are going about it their way, which is making it their own, unless they're screw for screw or pin for pin copying.
Yeah, and I think we started this whole presentation by saying we're not expecting anyone to be an expert in this. So we are trying to make it as easy as possible for us to find these robots. But that being said, you know, we're not expecting anyone to be knowing all the builds that are out there.
I do see a question that just came in. At our events, most teams don't include any code in their engineering notebooks. How to judge? Just get the team's code in order to review it to determine if it matches their skill level. Well, that would be part of the judging process where the judges actually ask to see their code when they go to interview them. So when they go to interview them, they can ask if they have their laptop there to see the code where they can review it and talk about it. And I do know that we are at our hour mark.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so just a reminder of the upcoming trainings and webinars that we have. The head referee training is actually happening right now after this. So if you have registered for that, you might want to hop over to that one. Judge training is coming up on October 23rd. That's always a great place to learn more about the judging process and understand that. And then we'll be looking at additional opportunities for coaches in November, and then tournament manager coming up. And so if you want to go to the last PD slide there, and I think Dan has some more something to say. And if your question was not answered tonight, please reach out to your RSM and ask that question, because we do want to answer your questions. And we'll pull in Dan if we need to. And we just couldn't get to all of them.
I just wanted to take this moment to thank everybody for attending today. It is obviously a huge chunk out of your day, and I know everyone is busy. So I just wanted to say thank you. It honestly means a lot, especially because this is something that I truly do care about. If you ever see me at an event, or if you ever just want to have a conversation with me, please feel free. I'm always there. But especially with questions after today, please reach out to your RSM. RSM should always be your first line. They will consult me if need be, as well as they are very well versed in this, as well as This has been a blast. Please, please, please reach out to codeofconduct@recf.org if you have any feedback about the process, if you or if there's any particular questions about the process. We're always looking for feedback. We're always looking to grow, and that's all I got.
Thank you. And we appreciate you all coming tonight to hanging with us here. And hopefully we'll see you at one of the ones in the next couple of months. So thank you for tonight.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.